The mass society theory says that you have so many people in a society, and the numbers keep growing and growing and growing and growing and growing, that people lose their identity because they become nobodies. They are no longer a part of anything. They're disconnected. They become so individual that they're not connected to anybody, and therefore they lose their sense of self, and that causes catastrophic brain damage, if you will, at the psychological level. The individual becomes, well, let's say, in mass society, the individual becomes desperately lost. How about that? The individual becomes desperately lost. That's what mass society is supposed to do. You lose your sense of self. And when you lose your sense of self, then nothing is right. Everything is wrong.
Isn't this a mass society that we live in a mass society?
Absolutely.
And it keeps growing and growing, and we're becoming disconnected from reality, from everything else.
Absolutely. And in this cultural context, or within this society, we live within a culture that really promotes the idea of individualism. Now the problem, and we're supposed to get into this later, the problem is not for Europeans per se. Those statistics of suicide are considered to be normal, just like you have acceptable levels of unemployment. And so the level of statistics, the level of suicide, these people aren't alarmed about that. They consider that to be just part of the equation, what comes with it. The problem is not for them. The problem is for us, because this type of society, not large societies, which is the problem. The problem is the organization of people within that society, within those types of societies. So if you have a massive society where you have thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of collections of large family structures, or large lineages where everybody is connected, where bureaucratic structure doesn't need to come in to create orphanages or to create social welfare nets, because everything is taken care of within there, and you are somebody. Everybody in there is your mama, everybody in there is your baba, all of these is your family, brothers and sisters. Then this doesn't happen. Society can get enormous. It can get gargantuan, as long as these still remain. And then at the larger levels, then you might have this group that falls within a state or a particular political order that sits along with other, where they have their families in here, and you all trade and do whatever it is that you need to do together. But within these family structures, within these lineages, everybody knows everybody, everybody's fine. Everybody has everybody to lean on. Everybody's there for everybody. There's no one who gets lost. Everybody's accounted for. Everybody's a part. So you can have, the problem is when you have mass society and extreme individualism is promoted as the way that you're supposed to be. In order for capitalism to really profit, you have to divide people up into individuals. You have to separate them from anything that could. Capitalism is like the prostitute, like the pimp to the prostitute. And the first thing that the pimp does is he separates the prostitute from family and friends, so that pimp becomes the controlling, ruling, guiding body. So the prostitute comes to think that this pimp is the only person on this planet who loves him or her. Okay, that's the only person. And when capitalism can control individuals like that, it can ship you where it wants to, separate you from family, do all the rest of this, have you spend your money in whatever way it needs to continue to profit, which is the end goal, making that profit. Using you in whatever way it needs to produce, mass produce, whatever that's needed to produce what it needs to create its profit. So it needs individuals. It can't have families. Capitalism, European culture cannot promote the idea of family except to produce babies to survive when they have negative population growth and they see themselves as disappearing from the planet. They cannot promote the idea of family because you can't control a family the way you can control individuals. It's sort of like when you have students at a college. They're upset with the administration because they won't let them do this or they're making them do that. And then the students had a little protest. And a smart administration in the Western system, it's going to call the individuals who they see as the leaders of this protest in one at a time, individually, and it's going to terrorize them, break them down, threaten their scholarships, do whatever it needs to do to break them apart as individuals. And once you have done that, then the movement, the protest is no longer there. You can't do that as long as they're a collective. You can't do that as long as they're together. You have to break people up into individuals. And then you can use them. You can tear them apart. As long as they're not connected, not family, not organized, then you can do that. So within this context, within that mentality, then suicide is not considered abnormal. It's not considered something that's way out in left field. Okay, that's not something that's really odd. So in that context, mass society is very conducive to producing suicide. Okay? And it's even worse for Africans who come from this situation. When you're thrown into this chaos and you're disconnected from everything, these people already consider themselves to be only individuals. So this only exacerbates it, and only the weak ones commit suicide. Okay? In this society, it's quite different because these folks are all intertwined together. So if you snatch them out of this context, their whole sense of reality, it doesn't make sense. It's like you woke up in a place where nobody speaks your same language, nobody wears the same clothes, don't eat the same food. Nothing is what it's supposed to be. And there's no one to hold on to latch on to make this make sense. Whereas here, everything made perfect sense. Everything made perfect sense. Everybody had the same ideas about what you need and what you don't need, and wealth and resources and all the rest of that. Okay. Now, related to that, statistics, I'm not going to be dealing with statistics tonight because it doesn't really help the situation. We have to understand the mentality behind that. Why Europeans have a culture that is suicidogenic, which we're going to talk about in a second. Why it is considered to be a normative part of society and behavior, and why it affects Africans more. That's what we need to understand. Because if we understand that, then we can stop it. If you don't understand why, all you know is a bunch of numbers and it's getting worse, then all you can do is cry. Okay. The greater the need for external, that means outside the person, validation, the higher the suicide rates. Or you can say the higher the probability of individuals committing suicide. European society is dominated by external control of individuals. Police, whatever, external control. In our traditions, we were raised in a culture that taught you to control yourself from your inside out. You were the judge of yourself, in a sense, even though everybody else was a mirror by which you could tell whether you were doing right or wrong. But you controlled yourself from the inside. It was internally controlled. So the more you have this, external control, external appreciation, then the easier it is to put people in a position where they want to commit suicide. If there are people who, in this cultural context, who if they don't continue to receive approval from people on the outside for what they do and what they don't do, even when they know they're doing what they're supposed to do, what they're doing right, they feel bad. They feel very, very bad. Because they need other people to tell them that they're okay. There's a lot of people like that. I think everybody here knows people like that. In our traditions, if you knew that you were doing right, you were doing your work. If other people said, well, that didn't affect your self-esteem. That didn't take anything away from that. You knew that you were doing what was right. So in this situation, when this is taken away, when that validation is taken away, your self-esteem is taken away. So you have a greater probability of people committing suicide. You have higher suicide rates in situations where there is an enormous amount of external validation, where people are approved of from outside, where their self-esteem is dependent upon the pats on their heads or the pats on their backs from other people. I argue that the key to understanding suicide rates, which we already talked about with that cross-cultural thing with the different countries, with the rising suicide rate relatively stable. And we've already mentioned in terms of suicide being a common phenomenon within European culture. I'm going to borrow a word from Rimba Ani. I would argue that the key to understanding suicide rates is the assimilate. And the culture comes out of the assimilate. And of course, individuals become who they are through the culture, even though I argue that there is a genetic component. So I would say culture. So it is ingrained in your genes, what you are, who you are. 900 years on the Caucasus Mountains, that created a psychological sense of self. It gets passed on from generation to generation to generation. Just like if you go through 12 generations of direct enslavement, violent, brutal enslavement, where you were whipped inside of your mother's womb, and this goes on for generation after generation, that rage gets passed on, that trauma gets passed on. Doesn't stop. It's not something that happens as a result of you coming out of your enslavement and then you recognize and then suddenly this happens, somebody gets lynched and then you realize, oh, well, I'm angry. No, I argue that it gets passed on through the genes. And the only reason we don't like talking about genes or genetic structure is because of the mess that Europeans have made of genetic structure through their eugenics or scientific racism. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a problem with it. We didn't have a problem with it before, we're going to have a problem with them. But the asili, as Mama Rumba calls it, is the cultural core, germinal seed, that essence of people's being that develops genocultural personality. And I know that I'm not doing it justice, but we need to be at least familiar with these concepts. So this is not something that you can touch. This is not tangible. This is the essence of a people, what they came out of, their mind. And out of their mind, they create a culture. They create society. They create themselves. And that society is a personality, which is different from the asili of another person that creates a different kind of cultural personality, which creates a different type of individual. Within European culture, this individual is created where there's a suicidal component, where this person is more prone to commit suicide than this person. Not only because the institutions in the society make it easy for the person to do that, but because there's a genocultural component in the individual that can be triggered more easily by different things.
Now, what is genoculture again?
To me, I have defined genoculture as a combination of genetic structure and culture. Okay, if you came into existence today as a people, and you had a certain appetite for whatever, or if it was created by your environment, so you might have a greater taste for bloodthirsty violence or what have you. Now, that's part of your genetic structure, but it becomes strengthened through the culture, which manifests it in everything that you do. It's strengthened through that. And over time, those things are blended into one, and they can't be separable. A lot of people want to separate these two and say, oh, it's only culture that makes people like that. See, black folks over there acting like white folks. No, they're acting out of their cultural context. Europeans are acting out of their acting in their genocultural context. Africans, in this cultural context, are just great imitators. This is not us. This is just the way we're acting. And it's not us because we got some genes that tell us that this is not us. This is not the way we're supposed to be. And we have a cultural context that we came through that tells us we are not us. We have, the asili is part of your spiritual cultural context, if you will. Okay? It's not something that's grounded here. You can't put your finger on. It's part of your essence as a people. Okay? Genoculture is just something that evolves over time, that survives with you. That's why it's so easy. You can have Europeans at peace in a particular country, if you want to call it peace, in a particular country for 20 generations. And as soon as something happens, they know to go and annihilate all those other people. It's not something that they think about. They just do.
They just go annihilate other people?
Whoever the other people are, yes. So even if it hasn't happened for a long time, even if, let's say they annihilated a whole collection of people and then took over their land. Okay, and then they became at peace with themselves and practically everybody else. And then somebody over here doesn't allow them to get a certain resource that they want. They go annihilate these other people. They don't have to sit and thought about it in policy and it all over their culture. No, they know to do this. They don't have to think about it. They know to do this.
So that's part of their nature, to do that. That's so natural.
Their nature. All that complicated, all I do is say it's part of their nature.
In layman's terms.
Yes, absolutely. Part of their nature.
So it's just, so they, you know, it's not like they sit down and draw up a contract and compromise and
You know.
do that. They just go and just do that.
You know, it reminds me of a situation, or some situations in Azania, which we're calling South Africa wrongly, but in Azania and in LA, when there was a threat of Africans going off because of apartheid in Azania at one particular time. I'm not sure it was Cape Town, I don't think it was Cape Town or something. The white folks immediately went and emptied the gun stores. There wasn't a conversation, there wasn't a vote, there wasn't a committee meeting, there wasn't a calling of Congress. They went and emptied the gun stores and got ready. On the other part of the planet, when there was a threat that black folks were going to go off in LA, the gun stores in LA were immediately emptied by the white folks in preparation. There was no conversation. There was no thinking. Exactly the same thing happened in these two separate places. Those aren't the only examples, but to me, because you're talking about two completely different parts of the world, the exact thing happened. The exact same thing happened. So like you said, it's part of this. And some people say, well, there's social conditioning and control. No. Sigmund Freud, their best psychologist, talked about how the Caucasus Mountains created an overly aggressive being. He wrote a paper, Michael Bradley talked about it in his The Chosen People of the Caucasus Mountains, and they kept this paper hidden for decades. Sigmund Freud wrote this about his own.
So what did he say, Bradley? He said that they was overly aggressive.
He was quoting Sigmund Freud.
Okay.
And Sigmund Freud said that their development as a people in the Caucasus Mountains, the violence, all the rest of that aggression that went on there in terms of the development, that this was part of their personality. That's what Sigmund Freud said. Not some obscure psychiatrist. No, the most important, most quoted psychiatrist in European history, Sigmund Freud, said this about his own. So they know. But as long as they can convince us of something else, then they're straight. They can continue to do what they do, and each time we'll find an excuse for it. We'll explain it away as anything but their nature. We'll explain it away as anything but that.